Welcome to Love and Lies Audio, where we tell you the untold tales of love, lies, and life after betrayal. Every heartbreak has a voice, and this is theirs. I used to believe silence was nothing, a pause, an awkward silence between individuals, a gap between noises. That was it. But the night I discovered my wife's infidelity, silence took on a far greater form, something powerful, slicing, even deadly. Silence became my weapon. But before that, there were months of denial. Months when I entertained the possibility that I was making it up, that I was the insecure one, that marriage naturally cooled down and I had to learn to live with it. Anna and I were together nearly a decade. She was my anchor, my safe haven. I still remember the first time I saw her. Bright sundress, hair pulled back, her laugh cutting through the cafe noise like sun through glass. I thought, that's the laugh I want to hear for the rest of my life. And for a long time, I did. We had history, stories only we shared. Late-night drives to nowhere, cheap pizza dinners that tasted like five-star meals because of her company, promises whispered into each other's hair. She knew me at my rawest, when I lost my father, when I almost quit my job, when I doubted myself. And I knew her, or at least I thought I did. So when she started to change, I did not panic. It was small things at first, her phone never leaving her hand. She even brought it into the shower once, claiming she had to time herself. Absurd. But I held my tongue because love is sometimes trusting even when you don't have the answers. Or maybe because I was scared of the answers. And then there was the perfume. Something floral, intoxicating, exotic. She told me she had bought it for herself. I wanted to believe her, but the way it clung to her skin, it didn't smell like us. It smelled like it had been selected by another. She started dressing differently, too. The jeans that had been casual were traded in for skirts I hadn't seen in years. Receipts from lingerie shops crumpled at the bottom of her purse. Nights when she said she had work dinners, although she worked at a company where the fanciest night out was usually a late run to Starbucks. But the worst? Her laugh. It wasn't gone. It had just been rerouted. She laughed on the phone. She laughed in ways she hadn't laughed with me in months. That special, unprotected laugh that once belonged to me alone was being given to someone else. It ate at me. At night, I'd lie awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing and wondering, is she dreaming about me or about him? I tried to brush it off, told myself, every marriage has bumps. Maybe I wasn't giving her enough attention. Maybe I was too tired, too focused on work. Maybe if I planned a surprise trip, cooked dinner, bought her flowers, I could get us back. I clung to these rationalizations like a drowning man clutching at driftwood. But love without trust is a slow death, and trust was bleeding out of me every day. One night sealed the deal. I came home earlier than usual. Traffic was lighter. A meeting was canceled. Her car was already parked there, which should have put me at ease. But instead, a wave of apprehension washed over me. The house was too quiet, yet filled with something invisible. Like I'd walked into a room where someone had just been laughing, but now the air was stiff, pretending nothing happened. I climbed the stairs. I halted midway. Her laughter drifted down the hallway. That soft, golden laugh that once wrapped around me like a blanket. But now it pierced. Because it wasn't for me. It hadn't been mine in months. A man's voice came next. Recognizable. Too recognizable. My heart pounding, my throat closing. Every step towards our bedroom was like walking into a storm. My shaking hand on the doorknob was nearly enough to send me back to convince myself I was wrong. But some masochistic part of my mind needed to see it. I opened the door. The world ended. Anna was there, tangled in sheets that belonged to our bed, in the room where we had dreamed, battled, made up, mapped a life. Her eyes grew wide, her face pale, and she chased around for words that didn't come. Beside her, half naked, was Mark. My best friend. The man who stood beside me at my wedding. The man who toasted us with a smile so wide you'd have thought my happiness was his. The man I used to say was more like a brother than a friend. And now he sneered at me. That condescending, vile curl of lips that said, I won. She chose me. What are you going to do about it? Anna's voice sliced through the silence. It's not what it looks like. But I didn't wait to hear the rest. Because I didn't scream, I didn't throw anything, I didn't punch him. Instead, I turned, and I walked out. And that silence, my silence, spoke louder than any words could. I drove for hours. Her frantic calls vibrated my phone, her texts filling the screen. Please talk to me. It's not what you think. I'm sorry. Please come home. I ignored each and every one of them. I parked in some empty lot, trembling hands on the wheel. Betrayal is strange. It doesn't hit you all at once. It seeps in, like a flame in an ice bath at the same time. My chest was hollow, but my head was screaming. Images of the two of them tangled together burned themselves into my eyelids every time I blinked. I laughed, a harsh, jagged noise. Because how could life be so unfair? The two people I trusted more than anyone else, the woman I loved and the friend I would have died for, had got together and stabbed me in the back. Hours later, I came home. She waited, her makeup smeared, her body trembling, her eyes swollen from crying. She fell at my feet, begging. It was a mistake. I was lonely. It didn't mean anything. Please, please speak to me. But I remained silent. I sat across from her. My silence was heavier than chains. She attempted to reach out to me, but I pulled away. Her screams filled the room, bouncing off the walls, growing louder. But I was silent. I did not yell, did not curse, did not insist. I gave her nothing. That night, she got into bed after me, apologizing into the darkness. She shaped herself to my side, wanting warmth. I was still, my eyes on the ceiling, silent. The next few days, she tried everything, cooking my favorite meals, leaving notes in my jacket pocket, sending me long, desperate texts during the day, each one a plea for me to fight, to yell, to do anything but this. But I didn't utter a word. And the silence was worse than any argument. Because an argument would have meant there was still hope, still connection, still something to salvage. Silence meant she was left alone with the sound of her choices. At work, people said I was quieter than usual, but more biting, more incisive, like I had directed all my energy inwards, where it was freezing into something cold and lethal. Because I had made up my mind. I was not going to scream. I was not going to fight Mark on the street. I was not going to provide Anna with the satisfaction of my tears. No, my vengeance would be slow, patient, precision itself. And silence would be my secret weapon. The weeks after I found out became months, the months years. Each morning I woke up with the same emptiness gnawing at me within, as though something essential had been torn from my chest. And still, to the world outside, I said nothing. I had made my choice to speak in silence, to render absence of words the keenest tool I could employ. People think silence is passive, but I learned enough soon enough it's the opposite. Silence is active, it's disturbing, it causes discomfort, it forces the guilty to live in their own echo chamber, hounded by their own voice, their own conscience, with no relief. My wife Claire tried everything in those first weeks. At first, she was the confused but innocent wife, gaslighting me with the most gentle of whispers. "Something's the matter with you recently," she'd remark during supper, her fork against the white plate, her smile a little forced. I wouldn't answer. I would chew slowly, sip from my water, and look at her unblinking. That sort of look was powerful, and she knew that. I could see it in the almost imperceptible trembling of her hand as she set her glass on the table, in the just a little bit too polished laughter. She grew more and more bold, more and more defensive after that. "Are you going to just keep pouting like a child? If there's something you want to say to me, say it." I was still not saying anything. The silence wasn't pouting, it was reflection. I stood before her with it, and she recognized her own shame on its face. That's when cracks began to form. Claire started lying awake late at night, mindlessly scrolling through her phone, as if she were stuck on some empty diversion. But I saw the strain in her jaw, the tapping foot. She couldn't bear to be around me when I wasn't speaking. She finally lost it. One night she banged her phone on the table. "This is ridiculous. Do you want a divorce? That's all you're going to say? Because if you do, just say so." Her voice shook, and that was when I knew the silence was working. She needed me to lose my temper, to scream, to berate her, because that would empower her. A fight to spin as both sides losing later. But silence gave her no story, no excuse. I stood quietly, grabbed my plate, and entered the kitchen in absolute silence. She shouted after me, voice cracking, "You can't punish me forever. I won't live like that." But she was already living like that. And with every new day, the suffocating weight of her treachery pressed harder. To the rest of the world, we were still the perfect couple. I smiled and played my role during family gatherings, but never let warmth into my eyes when they landed on her. My family knew, her friends were suspicious, but Claire was trapped. She couldn't explain to anyone why things had shifted, because that would mean exposing her affair. So she endured, forcing a laugh at the jokes, clinging to my arm on the streets as I permitted my body to firm in her grip. She was performing for a world that never realized the play had been rewritten already, and I reveled in it. This was my subtle revenge, not shrieking, not begging, not fighting, simply to allow her to catch glimpses of the cage she built around herself. The affair's aftermath. Claire's suitor also vanished quickly the moment he realized the bother of consorting with a married woman whose husband was not crumbling, but on the contrary, hardening, toughening, becoming inaccessible. He became as if nothing, and I knew so without ever needing evidence. The midnight texts ended. The fabricated work-late alibis fell apart, and instead of relief, she was left with the heartbreaking reality of her choice. She had staked everything and lost. Her efforts to reach me became more desperate. She prepared my favorite dishes, organized small weekend outings, even purchased me presents she hoped would thaw out the frost. Each was greeted with the same unbreakable silence, not cruelty, silence, not rage, calm, and that consumed her. There is a queer sort of power in watching guilt unravel a person from the inside out. Claire lost weight, not for health, but for stress. Shadows crept across her eyes. Her laughter rang hollow. She apologized for infinitesimal things, nothing mistakes, as if seeking forgiveness in whatever way I could offer. Sorry I forgot to get milk. Sorry I was late answering your text. Sorry for leaving the lights on. All my apologies were implicit confessions. She wasn't apologizing for the small things. She was apologizing for the big thing, the unspoken betrayal that clung between us like smoke. And yet I remained silent. Months into this silent war, I woke up one night to the sound of stifled sobbing in the bathroom. I made my way down the hallway and opened the door. Claire was curled on the floor, knees to her chest, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Mascara streaked down her face, and she lifted those raw, shattered eyes to mine. "Please," she panted, "just say something, anything. I can't keep this up." I stood there, watching her collapse. For a brief moment I felt sorry. Memories of the way we once were came out to me. But I recalled then the sight of her laughing with him, the messages I'd read, the deceptions she so easily spun. So I gave her nothing, only silence. Her sobbing echoed off the tiles hours after I rolled over and went back to bed. I would have left, some would have said. I would have fought with her, others would have said. Leaving would have given her an escape, a clean cut. Fighting would have given her a fight that she could play. Silence? Silence had been a prison in which she was both captive and jailer. She spent each day stuck in her guilt, unable to pass the buck, unable to rewrite the script. She hungered for words, because words were malleable. But silence? Silence was pure truth. And with every moment that passed, she realized that she wasn't just losing my love. She was losing my respect, my presence, my existence. I was a specter in her life, observing her every move without ever speaking a word. That was the revenge. Not melodramatic, not loud, but shattering. Silence only goes on so long before it becomes something else. By the time nearly a year had passed since Claire had betrayed us, our home was a mausoleum, beyond beautiful to behold, dead inside. Every photo on the walls taunted us. Every item of furniture bore the ghosts of who we once were. But something had also shifted in me. The silence was no longer a weapon. It was a reflection showing me who I had turned into. And what I saw was not the broken and betrayed man she was anticipating. I had rebuilt myself. At first, my silence was a survival mechanism, a way to have control when emotions could flood me. But ultimately, I redirected all that energy towards something else, myself. I resumed running, miles at dawn before the world arose. I started going to the gym and shed the weight of depression that had latched onto me after learning about the affair. I resumed reading, psychology, philosophy, strategy. I read resilience books, betrayal books, books about the human mind. And I didn't even do that. I began reconnecting with old friends she had systematically pushed out of my life. I wove a web, an unspoken army of friends she did not even know about. Claire noticed. She noticed the sharper angle of my jaw, the way my clothes fit me differently, the renewed sparkle in my eyes. She noticed how my phone flashed with messages from women unknown to her. She noticed how my silence now no longer seemed punishment, but freedom. And it frightened the pants off her. Claire, who had been so sure of her control, was unraveling at the edges. Her attempts at reaching me became increasingly desperate. She made my favorite meal one evening, steak, well seared, accompanied with garlic, butter, potatoes, and wine. She set candles on the table, turned off the lights, wearing the exact dress she claimed made me fall in love with her. I sat across from her, as quiet as ever. She raised her glass, her voice trembling. "I know I've done wrong. I know I've hurt you, but I'm still your wife. I love you. Please, can we just begin again?" Her tears glistened in her eyes, her voice shaking in places she couldn't help. For an instant, I believed her, almost, and then I remembered the secret messages, the giggling in another man's arms, the way she attempted to lie to me forever. I lifted my glass, struck it against hers softly, and sipped. No words, only the ring of crystal and silence. The spark of hope flickered in her eyes for a moment, then died. She was finally learning. I wasn't coming back. Not the way she wanted. The worst revenge isn't yelling or breaking plates. It's thriving in the face of the one who tried to break you. I began posting on social media more frequently. Photos of me hiking with friends, smiling over dinner, attending networking events, marathons. Nothing too forward, nothing mean. Just a photograph of a man living life too big for regret. Claire watched from the sidelines, liking them with shaking hands, commenting with hollow hearts. But behind closed doors, she wilted. She started asking questions in the late hours of the night. Who were you with today? Why didn't you tell me you were going out? Are you seeing someone? I'd just blink at her, not blinking, and watch the silence choke her. Her limit was reached one evening. I came home late, the city night and smell of cologne still on my clothes. Claire sat in the living room, her hair in disarray, her eyes red with crying. She jumped up from the couch as soon as I entered. "Who is she?" she demanded. Her voice rang out, harsh with desperation. I leaned my head to one side, entertained. I hadn't spoken a word in almost a year, and yet she was interrogating me as if I'd confessed everything. She paced, pulling at her hair. "Don't try to fool me. I know you're seeing someone. I can tell. After everything I've done, after I confessed it, I thought you'd have mercy on me, but you're just revengeful, aren't you?" I remained silent. Her legs buckled, and she fell to the floor, crying. She clutched my pant leg like a child. "Please, please don't leave. I couldn't have done this if you weren't here. I'll do whatever you want, anything. Don't walk away." And I knew in that moment my revenge was finished, but I wasn't finished. Revenge without closure doesn't exist. The next morning, I left a neatly typed letter on the kitchen counter. It wasn't a rant, not a scream on paper. It was cold and clinical and heartbreakingly so. There, I told her that I had known all along, that my silence was never weakness, but a reflection she had to look at every day. That as humanly as possible, I remade myself into something stronger, sharper, impervious. And that now, when I finally did say something, it would be action, not words. And at the bottom, divorce papers. No signature, only the papers, a pen, and silence. When she found them, Claire screamed, a scream so primal and bestial that it shook the walls. She tore the papers up, then fell to her knees, cradling the shards in her chest as if they were pieces of her heart. But I stood in the doorway, unmoved, serene. "For months," I told her finally, my tone hard, unyielding, stern, "I stole nothing from you, and you gave me everything. Your guilt, your fear, your desperation. That was my revenge. And now this," I gestured toward the papers, "is my freedom." Her head jerked backward, eyes wide, lips trembling. It had been nearly a year since she'd last heard my voice. The sound cut into her more ruthlessly than any scream ever had. And I left. Revenge is not killing someone. Revenge is making them realize they can't kill others anymore. My silence had been a means to an end, but also a cleansing flame. It had incinerated the weakness within me, and nothing was left but strength. Claire tried calling for months afterward. Messages piled up, apologies, requests, desperate bargains. But I never returned the call. Rather, I built a new existence, friends, career, passions I'd forgotten. I wasn't just surviving, I was alive. And whenever I smiled in a photo, whenever I laughed with those who loved me, I knew she saw it. I knew she knew the truth. The best revenge was not my silence. The best revenge was my life without her. Thanks for sticking with us to the end. If your life has taught you loyalty, betrayal, or strength in ways others might not totally understand, share your story with us in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Love and Lies Audio, where every story reminds us that silence doesn't equal defeat, and quiet conclusions can be the loudest victories.